comment? Oops, nobody from the public here.
No, well, first we need to do roll call.
Oh, roll call, I thought you just did that, I'm sorry.
Okay, so I was,
Susan, why don't you go ahead?
okay. All right, this is the ISSOC Communications Subcommittee meeting, May 26, 2022. Roll call, Mr. Steve Shim,
Here.
Mr. Fred Atkins,
Here.
Ms. Greta Campbell. Here. Mr. Chris Simino.
Here.
And Mr. Harlan Parrish has indicated he has an excused absence today.
Very good, now I'll call for public comment. Hearing none, let's move on, and I'd like to address a little bit of purpose, and I think when I sent you guys an email, or if you were not at the meeting, our goal is to, by the October timeframe, be able to bring to the board a recommendation as to how we might step out into the community as an ISSOC committee, members of our committee, to inform the public about what we've been doing beyond what's been done to date, that has predominantly been some district people speaking about it, but mostly online type, website type stuff. I wanted to work with a relatively small group from our committee, because I think you get too many people and you start losing the ability to get things done efficiently. Each of you were selected for various reasons. I mean, we have people that are working in the room. We have at least one old retired guy. Fred's been in the community a long time, has a business background. Greta understands the finances of the district and worked in the district for a long time. Chris has worked for both educational institutions and now for our largest employer in the county. And Harlan Parrish has been in the community for a long time. Is actually running Fine Mark's operation down in Medina Springs. So we have kind of a diverse group. I think we have the ability to appeal across the community, and that's one of the reasons that I put you all together. So each of you I also thought were good thinkers. The way we kind of mapped out going about this is that there are a total of, I believe, 3 meetings scheduled this subcommittee. There might be 4, but I think there are 3. And this first one, I envisioned that we would basically brainstorm and take your input and try not to come to any necessary conclusions. And then Susan and I and
Irma Lancaster.
yeah, Norma, our public relations person, will then kind of gather that information back up and maybe structure something for the next meeting to say, okay, guys, how's this look? So, and the one thing I would encourage you to do, please, I ran a company for a long time. I have the ability to run over people, speak up if I'm out in left field and pushing too hard in one direction and you don't agree with where we're going. You're here because we collectively need the best input of everybody at the table. And you sure won't hurt my feelings if you say, Steve, I think that's a really bad idea. So, in order to get the creative juices flowing, we thought what we would do is, and it's in your hands now, we were tasked in April to do a report to the board. Part of our the policy that sets forth the operation of the ISSOC committee requires us to report to the board quarterly. That had been done, but not been done real blatantly. So Susan and I showed up at that board meeting and said, okay, here is a report we're going to give you, and it's an overview of ISSOC to date. I thought I would walk you through that very quickly because it's one structure in which we made a presentation about how ISSOC's going. It is by no means finished product for what I featured we would take to the community. It was intended to be a brief presentation, and frankly, there were a lot of questions, Susan. It was very interesting. The board was interested. So, if you will, I'll walk you through this as if I were giving it to you, the school board, and maybe that'll get your head rolling as well as what I mailed you earlier in the week. Good evening, I'm Steve Shemp, Chairman of the ISSOC Committee, and we're here to report to you as the board. Our agenda this evening, I hope to give you an overview of what our committee does, talk a bit about our activities to date, share with you some sales tax, the surtax results to date, and then talk about a bit about communications and some recommendations to you, the board. Second slide was, our committee overview. We have 14 appointed members, 2 per board member, as each of you know. We meet in March, June, September, and December. Our charge is to determine as to the use and expenditures as to whether the tax money that's taken in is being spent in accordance with what the voters passed. We also have been tasked to make recommendations as to expenditures of funds from the sales tax, and then make recommendations to you as a board as to communications to the public. We're also charged to give you a board report quarterly from a chair or a designee. To date, all of those, we basically have been posting our minutes online. I didn't apologize to the board for having missed them, but that's okay. In the future, we plan on doing a written report and 3 times a year, having one of your senior staff present that to you as a board, and then in October of every year, the chairman of the board will be coming to you with a report combined with staff at the start of the year. In terms of our committee meeting activities, some of you have attended those meetings. We go over revenues and receipts and project expenditures of both actual and projected projects. We review various projects that have been completed or in process and are planned through the 4 referendum categories, and to refresh your memory, those 4 categories are the new construction and major renovations, safety and security, technology, and capital maintenance projects. We have at each meeting had 2 key motions that have passed unanimously, and that has been that we have passed motions indicating that, in our opinion, the projects have complied with the referendum scope, which is one of our charges, and secondly, that the expenditures have complied with the referendum scope, and that's one of our charges. I can report that we've had no exceptions pointed out since inception. Next slide is an overview of our sales tax results. The total funds received through March of this year are $260 million. We've expended $168 million of that. To explain the lag, it took us a while to ramp up the expenditure and do the planning. 100% of our schools have received some kind of support from the sales tax, had a single project or more projects done on their campuses. We've created 3,783 new student seats with sales tax money.
Was there any conversation about the bonding?
That didn't come up. It's interesting. We need to talk about that too. Yeah, good point, Chris. I think it came up in the later discussion part, your question about the later end of it. Yeah. And then we have the chart in terms of the revenues, the inception to date, and the projections and the results, and we shared that chart with the board so that they could see that, in fact, our projections have been reasonably accurate. And I made the statement that if I were running my business and I asked somebody to project income over a 3-year period, and they had it as being 247 million, and it came in at 266, I'd be saying that's pretty darn close. That's respectively close. Then we talked a bit about the construction and renovation projects on the next slides, and we pointed out 2 of the seats created, again, more than a 3% increase in seats in the district, and 6 major projects have received significant funding from the sales tax, Gateway High, Lehigh Makers Middle. We've completed 1 major renovation, and then we have 3 remodels that are in progress currently. In the safety and security area, we expended almost $40 million. All district campuses have been upgraded in the safety and security area, and significant funds have been used in the COVID response effort in order to keep our schools open. The technology number was $43 million. Again, 100% of our schools have seen increases in the technology, and that's been paid for with scale stacks number. And significantly, that has ranged from in-classroom technology to home student study technology. Capital maintenance projects, $52 million. I went through the whole list, and I won't bore you reading that list to you, but pointed out that the capital maintenance program is catching up significantly with the need. And then we switched to communications, and I pointed out to them that to date, there's been a staff district communication effort, primarily through social media and the district website, and some limited community presentations. That in progress, that funds have been approved to have FGCU do a study of the financial impact of the tax. And that we had pulled together this focus group to come back to them in October with a plan for the ISSOC committee and how we might communicate to the public and the taxpayer. Last, we gave them some recommendations. I recommended to them that the board policy currently calls for us to give recommendations to the board regarding the district's use and expenditure of surtax proceeds. That's word for word. And I would get off script here a little bit, but I really didn't appreciate that had the potential to be a problem until the lady showed up at a very early on meeting and had the comments about Lehigh Senior High School, if you still remember it. And she was very critical.
Riverdale.
It was Riverdale.
Yes.
And we were able to say to her, you're in the wrong spot. Well, the policy had her in the right spot because it gives us the responsibility to make recommendations. And, that worked out to be a happy ending because she got moved into the right area of the district and something was done about that situation. But to have that in policy, I recommended to the board that they work on amending their policy, because currently they have a district capital committee, they have board advisory committees in construction and finance that have community members, they have workshops, town halls, and public input, and board action to approve capital projects, and to have us stuck in the middle of all that, as opposed to.
Many people don't understand that.
Yeah, as opposed to our responsibility of making sure that the funds are expended in accordance with what the voters approved, really kind of mixes and matches. I think that was well received, and I think the board will probably do something about that. So we recommended to them that they remove that from the policy. Then we opened it up to questions. And there weren't any real crazy questions, were there,
No,
Susan?
I think it was well received, and they seemed excited to hear about telling our story. That's what we say, we don't always tell our story well, and it would be good to have an external entity other than the district telling our story for this oversight committee to be able to tell our story. So it was very well received to recommend this communications subcommittee.
From there, I just, that's one presentation about what we do. Obviously, there are things here, the recommendation to the board of policy change is not pertinent to something we might present to, say, a service club. But hopefully they will have that changed by the time we hit October, because our mission, our responsibilities, we need to be able to take to the public and say clearly what we do, and I'm hoping that gets cleaned up. There's council on all kinds of lawyers working on it.
We're on it, it takes a couple of public hearings to make that happen, so.
Okay, so it's happening. Okay, cool.
On the charge, Steve, going back to slide 2,
Yep.
3. The charge says to make recommendations as to the communication to the public. That's different than make presentations to the public.
That's true. That's
So-
true.
So now I'm hearing two things, right? District saying, we don't wanna do it, we want the ISSOC committee or representatives to do it.
I
And
think,
the charge is saying, you're not to do it, you're to make recommendations to
yeah,
how to do it.
I think that the district's not saying, we're not gonna do it, we want you to do it. I think that, from my perspective, and I believe the board, our ISSOC committee was pretty much in agreement with it. And our administrative people and our elected officials both really like the concept of us as private citizens speaking up. So that it's a preference on behalf of the district, not a requirement that we do that. It's not part of our job. And that's one key thing here, you know, how frequently will we do this and to whom? I don't view us as hitting the public speaker circuit 6 times a year, you know, with 10 of our members, 60. I mean, I don't see us as presentation specialists. But I do see us as, if we could identify where there would be some mileage so that we weren't totally outside the public eye, that we could help the communication of what's going on. One thing, and Susan, I hope that you're kind of keeping track of ideas. This is kind of a stream of consciousness meeting. One thing that I think we definitely need to be able to put in front of, say, if you're speaking to a service club, I really want you to go to this website. This is how you get there. This is where there's a lot of information. Please spend some time there. Because if you shot 25%, that the website does have really great information in it. But you're right, Chris. It's make recommendations, and our committee and pulling us together to come back to the full ISSOC committee. We could make a recommendation that's not our role. We could make a recommendation that the district should handle it entirely. That wouldn't be, I don't think that's the most effective use of a volunteer board in terms of bang for the buck, bang for the hour spent.
My recommendation is that it's both, right? That
I
the
think-
district and the
Right.
leadership have a role, and they control a lot of the channels of communication, frankly. Facebook, Twitter, press releases, lead, TV, et cetera, to use there, and supplement it with the volunteers and business leaders who are serving on the committee
Yeah.
in community meetings and our own presentations and our own op-eds, et cetera, but that it's if we really wanna communicate it well, we need the school district and the volunteers to move it forward together.
But wouldn't the board have to know what these volunteers are gonna be saying and approve it and everything? Cause I'm sure they wanna know what you're saying out there if,
And I would tell you that, what I've kind of envisioned is that we come back to our group with, number one, we think we ought to do it. Number two, I'll show you a PowerPoint that I think would be representative of what we should take out, and I do encourage your input. And number three, I think we ought to have an internal policy with our ISSOC committee that communication from our members, such as letters to the editor, are encouraged. However, I would like us to adopt a policy that before we, as an individual in the ISSOC committee, go out with that kind of thing, we in fact bring it to district staff to make sure we've got our facts right. Because nothing could be worse than one of us out there goofing things up, and have it wrong.
And I think we need to have speaking points. And as a committee, we stick to those speaking points. And so we're all saying the same thing. Because what I have seen in other committees happen is that there is dysfunction within the committee, and so they're saying different things. So that we're all on the same page, and we're on the same page as the board. So if we have speaking points, then the way I deliver them may be different, but I'm saying, we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
My other thought was that
Need to
in
be
different
defined.
communities, there are different ways to communicate, and we just have to recognize that. This board does not do that well. So what I'm saying is,
This
I'll put
group or the board?
the board, not our
Let's
board.
pick one, Edgar. I don't think-
The board does not do that well.
Right.
So what I see us doing is helping them to speak to those groups that they don't speak to well. Now, the problem with that is they have to acknowledge that they don't speak to them well. Not acknowledge publicly, but have knowledge of the fact that they don't speak to them well. Because when I see groups speaking, the only time I see the board in my community is when they're running for election. I never see them come to just present an idea, even when it was something as important as Franklin Park. And they used that in the sales tax when they were trying to get it passed, but never, they came to the school, and that's not really how you communicate with the community. They have to be open to that. I don't know that they are, and in my life now, I'm not trying to get them to be, but it's just a suggestion.
It might be worth shifting to the email that I sent to you guys to get your reaction to each of those questions that I sent you. And I'm passing out Harlan's response to that
okay,
email as
okay.
well. And run one of those over to Susan. And maybe Harlan's responses, I thought it might be worthwhile if we kind of work our way through those and say, okay, what do you think about the questions that I asked? So that again,
We're on the
when
same.
Susan and I later on work together, we can say, well, we kind of think of this way. So, key question, Greta, is what you were just talking about, where do we go? I think service clubs is kind of a no-brainer.
So, I just asked a question, right? So, we all believe that there should be enhanced communication about this program. Why? Right, so what I'm trying to do is solve our objective by determining who we talk to. My belief is that, there's two things here. One, it's a great story, right?
Right.
We are investing in our community, we are adding schools, we're adding seats, we're being more secure, we're giving kids more computers, great story, right? The second is that this needs to be sustainable. We can't come off and hit a cliff and lose this.
Right.
We have to prepare ourselves. And so to me, just thinking about that as an objective as well might position us as to who we should be talking to. Right. That's a general order.
That's why when I saw this questionnaire thing, I just wrote outside all of the above.
Yeah.
For that reason, like you were saying, that we wanna keep this going. And in order to keep this going, we got to have the whole community behind us.
Well, because it will come up as a referendum again.
Again, and I thought that's the point that he was making.
Right, and there might be short term, right, telling the great story of the impact that we're having. But then beginning to transition a communication plan as we come to a more sunset on this.
Mhm.
We're only 3 or 4 years into a 10-year plan.
Yeah,
Sort of transitioning our communication plan over time to say, this has been a real impact on our community.
I have to tell you that the sustainability of the program is the only reason that I'm on this committee. Because I think my time may very well be well spent on something that stays in the district as a funding mechanism that takes us to a district of excellence, and that has huge potential. And so that, I'm not that worried, quite frankly, about the district spending it the right way.
Right.
I'm more interested in seeing it be a sustainable situation for the district so that we have a much better district.
And I think you can achieve objective 2 by doing objective one, right?
Doing
Telling the good
objective one,
story.
Telling a good story.
Right, and people say, we can't live without these good stories, we can't live without this investment and this growth in our community. Where would we be if we didn't have $300 million
Well,
over the last two
let me ask
years?
you to kind of do an exercise. Let me rattle through the ones that I jotted down here, and I'd like you all to see if we could give them a 0 to 10. Okay? Okay, as to how important or how appropriate might be another question. Service clubs. I would tell you, my vote would be that that's probably a 10. Get a lot of coverage to a lot of people in a.
So my issue is a lot of time, and you're really, when you're talking to a Rotary, you're talking to, you're hitting 40, 50 people. So just gotta look at the impact of your time versus the number of
Right, so
people.
you
Now,
put a
those people are gonna go talk to people, sure, but
Yeah.
I put it a little bit less than that. There
Okay.
are some service clubs that are more important than others, but
Right,
it's
Yeah,
not a 10 out of 10 in my book, maybe a 6 or a 7.
okay, all right.
I would think it was 7.
But that's not a skip it, right?
No, no.
Okay. I'm just gonna say that got a plus, okay? Local governments.
2.
That's the one that I would kind of.
I put it on there being devil's advocate, guys. I don't want another local government to see what, I don't wanna advertise them how good this is, they might go after it.
Yeah.
So, I remember when Lee years ago wanted to do it for the emergency room thing, and wow, I was sitting there going, wow, this isn't good.
Well, the other thing is, in this environment, taxes are not viewed as positive.
Positive,
And
yeah.
particularly with
Yeah.
our elected officials,
So,
it's just, it
so
doesn't go well.
local governments would go off the list. Churches,
I think it's more important in some communities than others.
In some,
Yeah.
but there are other ways now to hit the communities without going through the churches, and you're just gonna get that one congregation,
and I would tell you that, this particular subject, our church is very community, our education. Focused, we sponsor things in the district, that kind of stuff. If you came to our full congregation and made a presentation at church on Sunday, there'd be a lot of people thinking, this isn't the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if, that's kind of.
My church would feel the same way because we feel that, we're there to worship.
So that'd go off.
Matter of fact, we don't even like for our preacher to get into too much politics.
We're in agreement.
You preach the Bible, don't, not politics,
If we were to take the 10 largest employers in Lee County that were not public entities, would it be worth calling on those CEOs?
Would it be worth having a communication to them in some shape or form? Yes.
So that's, the CEOs is a how would we do it? Okay? Political action organizations, I can't remember the, BUPAC as an example. Do we belong there?
I've presented to them, I'm not sure it's I don't know, could be.
They're,
You take a lot of slings and
they're part
arrows
of
from
they're
it.
part of the community that has some get up and go. They're not partisan particularly, recognizing what, that they live in a pretty conservative Republican community, but they are independent.
They're critical thinkers, they're
They
smart
probably be
people,
worth going in front of.
they ask good questions and they would strengthen your pitch.
Democratic Republican Committee and Republican Democratic, what do they call it, the local committee,
Yeah, I don't think that's.
or the Republican Committee. Probably not spinning wheel. Are there any others besides BUPAC that are out there?
I'd like to see a presentation made to an organization called a National Panhellenic Council, and to have them to they would be the host of it, but would invite others to come. Because that's where
The
you get,
national.
That's the panel, that's the Kappa Alpha Psi,
that's sororities
AKA.
and fraternities.
Fraternities. And it's called the end of the divine nine.
Yes, you're gonna get a significant part of the.
In our community,
Yeah.
we
So it's
call it the divine nine.
Yeah, but it's the National Panhellenic Council.
Do you
And
get
I was-
turnout?
Huh?
Do you get
Well,
turnout?
at the meetings, they just have representatives from each of the Divine Nine.
Right.
But what I was suggesting is that they be the host of a meeting and to bring the community together.
And that's how we do it, because each group has their, like, following that they will, that will come.
You talk about one to cover some mileage in terms of head count, that could be 100-person kind of thing.
Oh, yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
or more.
okay, good.
I have a suggestion that when an editorial goes to, or if an editorial goes to the news press, that also go to the community press. Which is, the community press is a newspaper that is circulated for free
Mhm.
in a lot of communities. I won't just say in my community, in a lot of communities.
And also,
I'm saying if there's an editorial to the news press,
if there's an editorial, then it should go to multiple outlets.
that's a good way of saying it.
There's
Yeah.
Florida Weekly too.
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it, multiple outlets. So that's not a face-to-face presentation, that's a,
There's nothing in-
Retirement communities. Gonna tell you that, well, it's amazing to me at Shell Point, I don't know that much about Cypress Cove, although I have a mother-in-law there, but Shell Point in their community center, when they have programs, sometimes they have incredible turnout.
And they may be probably the toughest audience, because they don't wanna pay no additional taxes, so you have to really sell them more, you know.
But they are voters.
The vote, that's what I was saying, that's what I'm saying, we got to sell them on that, because they are voters, and normally they like, I don't need no more taxes, you know, additional tax. I'd be curious to know if they had some kind of poll or survey on who voted for this to begin with, you know, what is the demographics for, you know, who voted? That'd be interesting to see that, you know.
What year was this approved in? In
18, November of 18.
Which is an off-year election.
mhm.
With some DeSantis gubernatorial election, there's probably good turnout in Florida for that.
Mhm.
If this was on the November ballot, I believe. I don't know. I don't
Yes, it
remember.
was.
Yes, it was on.
But that's probably a pretty good turnout for our gubernatorial election.
Yeah.
10 years from now, when it
Yeah.
comes back up, that means it's in 2028, which is a presidential election. You're gonna have good turnout.
Good turnout
It's a
again,
November
Yeah.
ballot referendum.
I'm gonna tell you that your retirement communities, the retirement communities that somebody writes a check to buy into are more willing to vote for education than not.
Okay.
They have the means, to have, you know, a sales tax, a penny or half-cent sales tax is a very insignificant part of their life. If anything, the sales tax is a regressive, I mean, it spreads across the Trump community. And those people have a tendency to support that kind of taxation.
You don't think they may have the attitude like, I don't have kids that go to school, so I don't care about what happened to the school.
A few of them may.
Okay.
Yeah. I've done a lot of
Okay, so that's-
fundraising in retirement communities.
Yeah.
Typically, when you pay to go into one of those, which is a Shell Point or Cypress Cove, you know, people are relatively well off and they're well educated. They
Yeah,
support
yeah,
education.
yeah.
Right, they know the value of it and have given back to the colleges and the schools, so. But the broader people, and there's a lot of them, who, you know, for retirement is a struggle.
Mhm.
As you said, as a regressive tax, this is tough if you're living on a fixed income.
Yeah.
For sure.
Schools Foundation, I would say for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Harlan.
Are there any other organizations in addition to the school's foundation.
And I think Greta made a good suggestion about the National Panhellenic Council. That was an additional one that we added, but I think that's it.
What about an FGCU? Is there a parallel?
There's an education at FGCU Foundation.
We are a feeder. As the public education system in Lee County is a feeder.
They should consider us a feeder.
I always call it Edison. Edison and FGCU, we are a feeder.
Yeah.
And we feed into some of the private universities too.
Like Hodges.
So, I
As
guess
a matter of fact, I know that Hodges is, they're gonna be going out to businesses. They got a program now where they're trying to go into different businesses and say, hey, you need to educate your employees. And they're trying to get a partnership so they can get them to send their employees to Hodges to get an education.
So that may even sit at the same level as the retirement communities, that's plus or minus, right?
I just don't know if you can generate a large enough audience out of those. They're obviously, could we use someone at FGCU or FSW as advocates, right? Could they come alongside you and say, the reason we need to have a strong Lee County public school
If they could
system.
introduce you.
Right, yeah,
Right.
no, but them as destinations for presentations, probably not, but them as partners. And frankly, I don't know that there's a lot of appetite for you coming in and just talking about a half penny sales tax, right? You have to expand beyond that, like what's the impact it's having? How is it helping us to recruit businesses and retain employees and things like that, right? And
There's another group that just came to mind, is the Horizon Council.
absolutely.
So, to kind of recap, if we were to limit ourselves to the top best ideas, service clubs, still lumped in the group, National Panhellenic Council,
You mentioned
Schools
FGCU.
Foundation, Horizon Council. And if we took on those four groupings and said, that's where we want to start, we would probably do pretty well with that, am I right?
From an organizational perspective.
Yeah.
I still think there's room to talk to a broad constituency. But if you were to say, where should we focus on organizations or groups, that makes sense.
Okay. And then, and BUPAC may fall into that list, but they're probably in the second grouping. And retirement communities, we're not quite sure yet. And the universities and colleges, we'd have to do some exploratory, okay, who's the contact point, and how would that be moving forward, right? Service clubs are easy, they're always looking for speakers.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Bernier was a speaker at BluePack this morning.
Was he?
I didn't go.
Yes, Dr. Bernier either has or is presenting at BUPAC.
I think it was today.
And the major CEOs are probably awake or just let that simmer for a while. So, but we agreed that we want to take a look at something or some effort that would fit those four groups, right?
Could you repeat those four groups for me, Steve?
Sure, service clubs, pretty broad group, National Panhellenic Council, Schools Foundation, and Horizon Council. And if you started out hitting those groups and you accomplish that within 2 years, I think then you'd have a foundation from which to work on, okay, what else do we want to do? That's probably broad enough.
some of those are one meetings,
Mhm.
straight up,
Mhm.
Horizon Council, panel and a council,
Right.
and,
Those
And
are
foundation.
single events, but
right,
You know,
but that
they're
service club
probably-
could be, you know,
there are probably 6 service clubs that have pretty good sized memberships, I'll bet. So that, if we counted them, let's assume there's 6 service clubs, National Penn Atlantic Schools Foundation, Horizon Council, you have 1, 2, 3, you've got 9 presentations to do. And quite frankly, I don't see us getting out there every 2 weeks, and, you know, at the end of the day,
you're retired.
yeah, I know, I'm retired. Okay, so that's a decent start, right?
Steve, could you list for me the 6 service clubs that come to mind for you?
Nope, I can't.
Okay, you said 6.
Rotary South, 1 downtown Rotary. I start to run out at that point, but you
Isn't
know,
there
if
an
you started
Eastleigh
to talk
County
to
little
the,
Rotary,
pardon me?
an Eastleigh County
Yeah,
Rotary?
there's a Lehigh Rotary that's a
Lehigh
pretty good sized
Rotary,
group too.
Yeah.
The South Lee, Estero and Bonita Rotaries work together sometimes and meet. There's a Kiwanis Club out on Sanibel that's pretty strong. Less, I think, Rotary on Sanibel, more Kiwanis. But it's a lot of business leaders, retired CEOs and things in that are influential.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we would agree that when we make presentations to groups, that that's a PowerPoint.
Mhm.
I know, I call people are more visual now than sit there and listen to you talk. I think they catch it more when because if you notice now, most churches now, preacher, when the preacher the sermon, he using visual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people are more visual now, you know, and everything.
Do we use the same presentation format for all groups? You know, Harlan was of the opinion, I believe a consistent message is important. And I think to start with, we ought to have a consistent
I agree with
presentation.
that, I agree with that, that's what I meant about
Change the
speaking
rep-
points.
That's
That's what I
Change the
meant.
numbers and the dates on the revenues and expenditures, but beyond that, same message, right?
But, the second half of your presentation was I think even more impactful when you show people.
Right.
Visuals,
Yeah.
the maintenance was, or the air conditioner was this and now it's this.
Yes,
and the
yeah.
Roof was this and now it's that.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a school you didn't have before with 1,300 students.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Numbers are good, don't remember that, but the impact will have more.
Who should be presenters? You know, from my standpoint, I think you have one member from ISSOC as a minimum and one senior staff person with them as a minimum. But the ISSOC people shouldn't be out there alone. And to put a staff person out doing this kind of thing to start with, doesn't make a lot of sense. Because they're spinning their tail, you know, they walk in the door as having a personal interest coming in the door.
Yeah,
Greta walks in the door, she no longer has a personal interest. She's just knowledgeable, and you're the same way, you know, none of us have a benefit.
Other than the benefit that it gives to our community schools.
yeah.
We're here for the right reason.
So could you clarify for me, is the focus there to have a staff member present, to have a
I
staff
think you
member?
always need to have a staff member because, Susan, we don't always understand the workings of the district. And you're going to have questions.
I'm gonna have questions, so you'll need them to have.
Right, I just wanted sure I had the conclusion that was there.
You gotta have somebody to
Absolutely.
defer to. And
I'm
Yeah.
say,
I'm
"Hey, I don't know
100%
anything
agreement.
about that, but I'm sure Susan knows so much, she's just dying to tell you.
Or take it back to get the answer. And
Right.
90% of what I get is like, I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
I don't know.
So we're kind of agreed that it ought to be a minimum of a one-on-one. Do we wanna report collections and expenditures as of a date? Do we wanna give projections? Do we wanna show sales tax numbers along with their fit into the larger district budget? You know, from my perspective, I think we have to report collections and expenditures.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
If you don't show how it relates to the district budget, you're gonna have the question, so you might as well get out in front of that question. You know, how much money is this to the district to be
Yeah,
the guy's question?
yeah.
Beyond that, I think you start to bore people. Maybe the breakdown of how the money has been spent to date in the 4 areas.
I think,
In the 4 areas, but without a lot of going deeper than, you know, impacting all schools. We don't have to say that at Riverdale we did this, and at this Dunbar we did this, just,
I don't think we want to go to that level.
I
because
agree.
I think Chris had said
That's
it
too much
earlier that it's
minutia.
just, you know, you start boring them with too many numbers and stuff like that, they'll get bored, yeah. But I think they need to know, have some.
Okay, so it's macro type stuff.
Yeah, and I've delved into these numbers, and I'm a numbers guy, and I don't understand.
Yeah.
Honestly, what we spend in ISSOC, how it interrelates with the system budget. Because, you know, you could get a question there that says, well, you have all this money, so now you don't have to spend the system money on whatever maintenance. So what do you spend in the system money?
Money on.
I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and-
You
Yeah.
brought me on to make sure
And
we're doing
staff
the right
members
thing.
can talk about capital projects and
Yeah.
other things
The more
that
you throw out there, the more it begs a
Question, yeah.
question that you're not ready to
Yeah.
answer. So if you put it in there, you gotta be ready to talk about it.
Yeah,
I'm here to talk about making sure that the ISSOC is spent on the things we said it was, and I'm here to tell you it is.
Yeah.
Right, and it's making a difference. But once you get into, well, how come,
but you got
now
some,
you can put more into
That would be-
transportation.
Cause I probably would ask that question, you know.
but you know you have detractors out there who are just there to kill the story.
Mhm.
So I think that we have to be prepared to talk about how it fits into the
The budget,
Budget.
budget.
full budget, because you know, I see things, I read things that they're saying, oh, the district is misappropriating these funds, and that's not true. But if they speak that loudly enough and often enough, there are people who will believe that.
It become reality.
Yeah, and I don't believe that, and I know that's not true.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I think we need to be prepared to, and maybe the members won't be prepared to speak to it, but we'll be prepared to share those questions with the staff members for their input. If they can answer then, and there is nothing wrong with saying, I'll get back to you. Because if you don't know the answer, don't try to bluff them, because, you know, they're there to kill the story, so.
I agree with you, but if you go out to make a presentation, you're meant to be an expert on something. And
this group is meant to be an expert on the sales tax portion of it.
Right.
So that should be our area of expertise. Beyond that, you know, I could speak to how it overall impacts the budget, but I'm not in it now day to day. And so we need a Susan or a Kelly or whatever to speak to what's happening day to day, if it comes up.
Right.
I don't think we need to bring it up. I don't think it's a part of our speaking point.
Yeah.
But if it comes up, we're prepared to answer the question.
Yeah.
Cause you're right, they'll get the group to, oh, well, they don't really need this.
I gotta get my questions answered before I can go out and answer other people's questions.
I don't know the answer to this, I'm just kind of wondering, how many adjacent districts or other districts in southwest Florida or west coast of Florida have this?
I think several, I heard one time, what is like,
I think
60-some county, how many,
So we have 67
school districts, and I think
there
there
are
are
multiple
probably,
districts.
and I think there's several,
Yes.
I think that number be higher than you think it is.
But I think we can research that.
Yeah, we can find that out, but I had heard somebody had,
Put on the research and we may want.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that may be something that may be a good selling point.
If it's a pretty good sized number,
Well,
we probably.
We can use it, but if it's not, then we'll just leave.
I don't know about that, cause I mean, they're talking about an elected superintendent and nobody the size of our district in the state of Florida has an elected superintendent, but it has taken traction and it's going wherever it's going. Nobody in, no district of our size or comparable.
Has that?
No,
I don't see that happening in Lee County either. I think the business community.
I don't know.
I don't know,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I heard people talk about it and they kind of wear and say, it'd be good and it'd be bad. That's what most people are right now, I think.
I'm gonna say something and I hope,
They're in the middle, they
They're on
can't.
TV.
okay, I will, thank you.
That's right, you don't see it.
Yeah, I won't say it then.
Okay, specific examples of things that would not have happened without the sales tax. I personally think that's powerful. I still reckon back to when I asked the question, how many students during COVID were able to get Chromebooks?
Chromebook, yeah.
Because of sales tax. And I don't know if you all recall, but our tech guy said, wow, I never really looked. His answer was, thinking out loud, he said, wow, I never really looked at it that way. Gosh, I think it, don't hold me to this number, but I think it was probably 14,000 or so. That blew me away.
Mhm.
I mean, I thought, there's 14,000 kids that have a Chromebook. Because, now we probably would have figured out a different way to get the same thing done, but it would have been a lot uglier.
And it wouldn't have been as quick, because this happened quickly. This happened over a spring break.
So
Over spring break.
we would task your 4 reporting groups to come up with, give us some examples that have some get up and go. Don't give us boring examples, give us ones that have some real appeal.
And now, the real appeal is gonna be in security, and whereas Dwayne won't talk about the details of it, but everybody will be interested in knowing that because of the
Yeah.
sales tax, we were able to better secure our schools.
And I
Yeah.
think we can task Dwayne with coming up with, a report.
Some generic
Doesn't give
information.
the particulars, but does hit all the components. Every school in our district now is using video for security perimeter. I mean, he could come up with some vanilla stuff without giving us
Yeah.
the detail, it's private.
This kind of, thing where you are reactive to what's in the public is a great opportunity. I think the school district missed the opportunity, right? After that, unfortunate shooting, then Carmine came out with the press. The school should have been out in social media saying, thanks to the half-penny sales tax, we've invested $49 million in hardening our schools.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Exactly.
voters,
Yeah,
for giving us the
Yeah.
opportunity to put that in.
yeah.
Like, that's not something we're gonna go out 3 weeks from now and do
Yeah,
a social.
It won't have the same impact.
We should have those types of school district
That might be,
saying that.
that might be something that we need to kind of report, get that message to the school board that they need to be more proactive with stuff like that,
It's a great opportunity.
Carmine.
Yeah, that
Oh,
would be great,
people are
yeah.
like, gee, we're all sitting
Yeah.
around at home
Oh,
going, gee, I hope it doesn't happen to
That
my
would
kid
have
at
boosted
Sarah High School.
tremendously.
I have to tell
But
you.
to have someone say, well, guess what, we invested $600,000 in improving the security, the centralized monitoring,
Yeah,
right?
If I were a seated school board member, I'd kind of cringe about that because what I go through the back of my head is, I really don't want to challenge some goofball.
To try to figure out how to get around.
Show how vulnerable.
Yeah.
Well, Carmine,
Let's see how great you are.
Mr. Photo Op, he's out there.
That's a good point.
All these things that I'm just saying, when they come up and they're funded or they're in any way associated with the money that's generated through ISSOC or through the
Sales
surplus,
tax.
should be highlighted by the district in real time.
Yep.
Right?
They make a good point though, but.
For purposes of not overburdening you guys' time-wise, I wanna keep us rolling too, because we're doing some good work here. So the specific examples thing is definitely worth doing, but we would task districts with coming up with, okay, give us some meat to work with. Would we want to address how capital needs would be addressed without the tax, i.e. borrowing
If I can touch on that briefly, so the board did ask this question not at your presentation, but at a recent presentation. And what happened is after the sales tax was passed, it was on the referendum in November of 2018. We started collections in January of 2019.
Yeah.
And July 1st, the state passed a law that new schools had to be funded through COPS, and they could not be
Certificates of
certificates of
participation.
participation, kind of like a bond or a mortgage, right? And we could not just take our sales tax money
Mhm.
and purchase a school. So the lobbying district, the lobbying interests for banking resulted in, they still get that investment of, we have to go out for the mortgage or bond and pay it off over time. Now, we can pay it off with the sales tax, but we are forced to use that method by law.
So in other words, we have to borrow it and pay them interest, but we can use the sales tax to shorten the duration of borrowing.
Correct, so if you recall, at the ISSOC table, we had the conversation of, don't show me years 7 through 10 of all debt service paying off these, because we thought we were, the general public thinks you've got sales tax, take that cash and build your school.
Right.
Well,
And
here
they're
we
gonna
are
save
going
that.
out and paying mortgage, paying extra for it because we're required to by law. And we don't want to heavy load that what we're paying right now is all paying down that debt service.
So let me make a suggestion that this may not end up being an end product, but we don't want to ignore it. What we might want to do is look at the concept of how our capital needs met in Florida's public education system and what are the realities and the myths. And we may want to go there and say, this is where it comes from, these are the restrictions that the district operates within, and this is what we're doing.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, that's a complex, that's why I said, we may
so-
want to, we probably ought to take a look at it.
Yeah.
There might be a select number of groups we want to have that conversation with, but that might be an
Right.
additional slide deck that goes with
Okay,
certain.
but let's
However,
look at
if
it.
you do it with a select group and the
That's true.
slide that becomes
That's true.
public
Yeah,
information
that's fine.
and everybody gets it because.
That's fine, I'm just, like, if we're going out and representing those types of things, if I'm gonna speak on behalf of this group, I'm not comfortable enough with
Okay.
that. Right.
So Susan, let's put it on the list that you and I need to talk a little bit about that, not ignore it, but it, that may not be a home run. Do we want to offer up our meeting schedule and encourage community attendance? I would tell them that we ought to offer up our meeting schedule and we need to communicate the website because that is a live, dynamic, changing document if it's maintained by the district where people can continue to look at what's going on with it. When I typed out, should we include an overview of what the voters passed, in other words, what they voted for. Harlan's comment was telling, and he kind of brought me to reality. He said, yes, this would be helpful. We have many new residents to the area as a result of the pandemic and natural migration to Florida. And I'll finish his sentence, and they don't have a clue about this. We need to educate them.
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting. It's true.
That's a good point.
We always think of the people who are here.
So I saw a press release a week or two ago that RSW record numbers,
I saw that.
right?
Yep.
The school district ought to follow that up with, and thank you, because those visitors, those 1.2 million visitors are paying your sales tax, right? And we projected that it's not gonna have a full effect on you because we have visitors coming in who are paying their sales tax.
Well, and,
Right. So you're not absorbing it, even all you new residents need to know, right? We passed this, yes, but it's being funded largely by outside people.
but I also saw that a large number of people are moving to Florida. They bring kids.
Yeah,
They don't leave them at home, they don't leave them back home, they bring them. And so that impacts the schools, which means that that's another area that at least we have some funds to assist with that. Is our student population growing, Susan?
Yes, it is. In fact, at our next ISSOC meeting, we're gonna shorten up, tighten up the regular presentation and share with the committee the future growth projections so that you can see how many students are anticipated to be coming and in which zones.
And new students means additional seats. Needed.
Mhm.
John Talmadge is a good asset for our county, he's the head of economic development, he came to our leadership group, because it's the same thing, right? Where do you build hospitals, where do you put doctors, right? We're facing all the same issues as the school system. And it was mind-blowing, the conversation, 28,000 people came in and moved into Lee County last year alone, right?
You know,
And look at the 15,000 homes outside on Corkscrew Road. Look at Lehigh Acres is 150,000 people, but could grow to 300 or 400,000. Cape build out is 400,000, right? And so he talked all about the commuter and the work is the north-south, right? That's the 75, Alico and Daniels and the living community and the commutability is east-west, right? The Cape and Lehigh Acres all trying to get into that corridor. And it's a remarkable demographic analysis of where businesses are moving to, how they're growing, and then where the people are gonna live. We're seeing homes in Lehigh Acres going for over $500,000. Now, it's not a workforce housing community any longer. It's tough.
When we have visitors that are not familiar with our area, and they talk about the growth and all that kind of stuff, I many times will say to a person who's really not familiar with what growth is, because a lot of people live in relatively stable communities. Okay, you know, you're from Ohio. Envision one of those small communities that has 15,000 people in it. And yeah, that's a real community, right? Yeah, it is. Envision that it started out as an open field with no roads, no sewers, no water treatment plants, no water system, no schools, no city, and we had to build that every year. And they kind of go, wow, you know, that's what happens here, we do that every year.
Right.
We build a town of 15,000 people, now it might be scattered out,
Yeah.
but that's what happened. I think it's important that in whatever presentation we come up with, that we do an overview of the ISSOC, the committee, its meeting schedule, and its charge from the voters. I think that's the lead-in.
And then you go, what
Basically,
problem
these
was
two
going
slides
on?
boil down for less
Yeah.
detail, but you know, that needs to be the starting message, am I correct?
And yeah, that's correct, and that's probably gonna increase your public attendance too, if they know, you know, cause some people probably don't know when we meet and how often we meet and everything, but if you start putting that out there, that they don't know, you know, more about it. So,
Do we
the
have,
good and the bad.
do we have enough thoughts to chew on for a while?
Absolutely. I believe that. So I've been taking down follow-up actions. In addition to everything that's been recommended, Mr. Sinow, I'm gonna recommend that you and I meet to go through and answer your questions, because if you're a member of the committee and you're not quite sure about how the sales tax interacts with the capital budget, then we need to make sure that that message is clear. And I think that demonstrates that you are knowledgeable of these subjects, and if there is something that's not clear to you, then we're certainly not gonna be able to deliver that message to the community that doesn't have exposure to all you've already been exposed to. So I'd like to invite you to meet with me and Kelly Letcher to go through the budget and how those interactions occur.
Yeah, and it's mostly because I'm ignorant, not because you haven't explained it well, it's that I'm dense. But it's a very, you have a very complex set of
It's
It's
not
a
rules.
complex
and
topic.
I was sitting there thinking that I might like to be attending that meeting.
So-
we did do a little briefing, but you know, it might be that we say to
A
the
deeper
committee, how about a 5:30 workshop where we talk about that from 5:30 to 6? It's off the it's not off the, you're not taking any votes or anything, but hey, we just wanna keep people informed. If you wanna show up at 5:30, they'll learn a little bit about the interaction. And we have new members because we did it probably 3 years ago. I think
Right.
Kelly did it 3 years ago. And I walked out a little better, but we have a lot of new members too.
One area which we have not addressed, and the Pan-Atlantic Council is really a wonderful one, but we haven't hit, how do you get, is the Hispanic community, does that community come together anywhere? What,
Yeah, there's a national, there's a local Hispanic, like,
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. There's
uh-huh.
a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
What about Dr.
That's probably one worth.
Flores.
Yes,
Flores? He seemed to have a lot of.
but there's a Chamber of Commerce,
Yeah, I
Hispanic
know they
Chamber
do
of
have,
Commerce.
they do have one.
So we need to research it and find out.
Yeah, they do have one.
That would fall in the, it's worth it going to, like the
Yeah.
Horizon Council.
Yeah, yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about what the district is gonna do to come alongside of us? Because they have a lot of tools. I mean, I'm comfortable going out to community and being.
That's probably a later meeting when Chris, when I take a look at, man, I just don't see the 8x16 plywood sign on a school site that says this is paid for by your sales tax dollars.
You're not
Thank
seeing
you,
it.
let's talk about that for a minute. I've given everybody this graphic.
I saw that.
So, one of the actions we've been working on is we've identified of all of our schools, 17 schools that have the greatest road visibility. We've identified the intersections, and we have quotes for, and this week approved the cost for, I call them the V signs, 2 4x8 sheets of plywood, and, it'll be, strategically placed, viewable from 2 sides of the road. And so we are going to have these produced and put in front, we're taking this to the board to make sure this is the language that they wanna see on those signs. And then put them out there so that, and then for each school that this is in front of, having at that school a list of the projects specifically that have been completed at that school with sales tax funds.
There you go. I could see this being the lead, but the real meat is a custom, each school, this is what's happened here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And, I think it's incumbent on the district to do that. So you're working on it.
And- Because we do billboards, 4x8 signs are good if it's this size, right?
Right.
Because you can drive by and read that.
Yeah.
But you can't describe the projects
Correct.
or anything else.
But I
So
did have,
you gotta get closer to the project, maybe have a little, 2 foot by 4 foot sign that says, supported by the citizens of Lee County, and here's what we've done.
But she wants them to go into the school, right?
So these signs will be on the roadways.
on the roadway,
So
yeah,
at the
on
corner,
roadway.
Raymond Page is on 41.
Yeah.
So there will be signs there that say your sales tax dollars at work for student success. And it's just a trigger for the concept, and as parents are coming through the pickup line, what's this about? Where's my school getting information? And at the school, we have that information. So in addition, we need to have the list of all schools and schools by zone, and what projects have been completed at each. So those are.
yeah, if I asked you to give me a complete list of sales tax expenditure on a per school by school basis, could you do that?
Yes, it's on
on
the
the
sales
web.
tax dashboard right now. So
Okay,
you
that
can
is
go
good.
by year and cumulative. So, okay, so that's
Yeah,
a good
it's very
idea.
good. No, but you might,
www.
yeah, you might wanna put the website, go changeforchange.org or something and.
Yeah,
and-
true,
and,
yeah.
Create a vanity, URL that just,
Right,
I played around with it on the website earlier today, it's really good, I mean, the website is top notch.
It's there.
But it's, a website is, what I would call a pull technology, right? You gotta go there and pull it down to you, right? What are we pushing to you?
Right.
Social media delivered on your feed, or a newsletter delivered to your email is pushed out to you. The website is a great source, but you gotta go find it.
Are we in agreement too that letters to the media, and press releases, not press releases, but letters to the media about the ISSOC function are important? That at some point in time, this becomes communication with the news press for a weekly community voice.
Yeah, I'd be happy to write something, even draft it for you or co-sign it, or you could submit it on behalf of the chair.
Right.
I
But I think that, that's a medium that, can cover a lot of people that you wouldn't otherwise touch. Okay, so what that might boil down to is, here's the next level. That might be, that we coin a letter to the editors of all the publications we wish to cover. And then if you could get a feature story writer to write an interview, those things really get read by the business community. We had people write articles in the course of my career. I probably had 2 or 3 writers contact me and say, I'm looking at doing a write-up for Business Weekly or whatever the magazine was. We'd like to do an article on your company. Are you willing to have us? Can I interview you and I'll write the article? But, recognize that I may write all kinds of stuff. And we always agreed, we got some forum to be open to an interview format.
someone like the Sean Martinelli on NBC2 closes the news with a story to share or something like that. These are good news stories.
Those are
And
great
NBC
coverage.
and Steve, they're always looking for good news stories to wrap things up. Oh, I used to have to go 45 minutes to school. Now, thanks to the sales tax, it's 5 minutes away, or we were never cold in school, but now, thanks to the sales tax, there's air conditioning in our school, or sidewalks. Teachers too could be good spokespeople for that.
So the presentation concept is a good one, we agree. The letter to the editor / written publication is a medium, and that's enough to bite off to start with.
So one more thing
We've got a
is,
lot of years we have a lot of years to adjust. I
right,
don't wanna be too
so
multifaceted to
let's
start with.
talk a little bit about the next couple of meetings that we are having here and the ISSOC committee's having. So at our next meeting, you'll want to bring something forward to them and tell them what progress you've made and had some ideas, or is that for the October meeting? That's the October meeting, right?
The October meeting, we hope to bring them finished product for their approval,
Okay,
and I'll be glad to just make a report along the way to prep them.
okay.
I can't believe, I think the approval of whatever we come up with by the full ISSOC committee is gonna become a detail. We couldn't take it to the board without their approval.
Right.
I don't think there's gonna be any feedback presented.
Half the committee's on the subcommittee, so
Right,
Yeah.
5 votes.
right. I mean, I just can't feature that our members are gonna say, well, what about this?
All right, so let's talk about, this committee has 2 meetings, June 23rd, we have this committee meeting followed by the ISSOC meeting. And the times for that meeting is at 4 o'clock.
By June 23rd, and I'm thinking of my schedule, I would like to have I'd like to have an outline for this group of a presentation that wouldn't by any means be finished product, but would be a regurgitation of what we've done today, to say to all of us, okay, I think I'll pretend it's you doing this report. Susan would present to us, this is what I think I heard you say to me. Now tell me if I missed it or if we need to supplement. I would take meeting number 2 as let's put all this thought together in an organized fashion and say, yeah, is that where we really want to take it? And from there, then our next meeting of this group, which is when, Susan?
September 22nd
Yeah,
at,
and that's well in advance of our October meeting.
at
I will look
4:30.
for Susan,
September 22nd.
second at 4:30.
yeah, I would look for us to come back with good finished product.
Oh, it's okay, I understand it, so on the 23rd of June, we'll meet at 4 o'clock prior to the 6 o'clock meeting.
Correct.
Okay, that's
So
okay.
they're both, the next 2 meetings, we'll have a pre-meeting of the subcommittee, followed by the standard ISSOC committee.
Okay,
And then it's not until October that you're planning to have a final product. It
okay,
goes before the
so,
board for approval.
But by
so September, it'll be 4:30.
by the September meeting of this group, I would envision that we have doggone close to finished product for us to,
What does a finished product look like?
I think.
A presentation
I think it
or
looks
a-
like a presentation.
Like
Plan.
present.
I think it looks like a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, that's
like what you
fine,
did
that
to
should be
us.
relatively straightforward to put together, not the plan of Shim's going out to the Fort Myers South, Semino's going out to the
Oh, no, because
Kiwanis.
I don't feature I don't feature any of us going out in the community with this presentation until after we've taken it to the board in October and said, this is what your ISSOC committee has approved to take to the community. We just want you to know we're doing this.
5 months away.
So that we would probably be rolling out with the start of next school year with, and then the first service club you go to and try to develop a schedule of, if we did 6 of these a year and you did them well, you'd have an impact over the years.
It might be a good idea to set a goal for, how many we would wanna do a year and how many might be interested, because some people might not be interested in doing that.
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to ask for volunteers
Who wants to,
after we present the finished product, we
Mm-hmm.
can say, how many of you guys are comfortable with hitting the speaking circuit?
What, is there a Foundation for Lee County Public Schools, wrap-up meeting at the end of the year? Or did
They
that
just
happen?
canceled their meeting for June, so they're basically going on summer break.
No, I was
State
thinking
of our
about
schools breakfast, which is tomorrow morning, is their last,
the school's breakfast is tomorrow
Yes,
It is.
7 a.m.
at Broadway Mall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't get invited to that this year.
you wanna go? Cause I may have a spare seat at the table for you.
I would love to go. So like, to me, this should be on the agenda. Like, the superintendent should speak to this. This is $250 million
Well, it may be
that we
part,
received.
it may be part of this.
Yeah, I mean,
don't know.
This is the partnership between what the committee does and what the system does. Like, I would think that this would be a home run to get this.
I wish I hadn't brought my phone in. Do I have your cell number?
I hope not.
I think I do, Chris.
Listen, I can show up and
Give
talk
me your-
my way in.
if you're serious,
Ship
I may-
table.
We may have an opening on the table tomorrow. What's your cell number?
I will have to see if we can redact that.
Chris, let me check with, let me see if I can sort out if we have a spare chair, I'll let you know.
I could talk to
Because I know
my team and
we
see
have
if
a
we have.
table, and I don't know if it's well attended or not. Okay. Anything else, guys? Good start, I wanna thank you all for your time and input, no problem. I liken this to,
Can you adjourn?
I move adjournment, is there a second?
I second.
I liken this to Conservation 2020. The voters keep approving it because it's doing good things and they understand it. And
Can,
it's
can,
a,
can
the
I
first
have,
one's hard and the next one ought to be easy, just don't screw it up.
can I capture the motion to adjourn? So Steve
They
made a
made a
motion and
motion
Greta.
to join and Greta second.
And it was unanimous.
It was.
Unanimous decision. I mean, vote.
We don't